The story demands that it not be in the United States. And we never really said where any of the Saw movies were, but clearly it was US or Canada. People are speaking English, it's a city. So this had to be outside of the country. And originally we were thinking of going to Eastern Europe.
This was probably March 2018, so more than 5 years ago. And we had a really interesting call with Mark and Oren. And Mark and Oren, for the first time, were saying, you know what? We might not shoot this in Toronto. Every other Saw film, from Saw 2 to Saw 9, Spiral, has been shot in Toronto. They've never said where it is, but that's where it always is.
The script for Saw X was originally written to take place in Prague, with the idea being that we would shoot in Bulgaria.
We were talking about Bulgaria, we were talking about many, many different locations. To be honest, we were thinking possibly going to Norway, because that's where the doctor was going to be. There was a lot of discussion about shooting this in Norway. And then when they found a great location in Mexico, all of that changed.
And then it became Mexico City, and the city opened itself up to us. Oren and myself both loved working there. We loved the people there. We had a great experience. And it made sense.
And as soon as I heard that, I said, money aside, I think that would be the very best place we could possibly shoot and set this story, because it's so unexpected, and there's so much sort of strange history to Mexico City with the Aztecs and Cortez and all that, and just the fact that it is such a crazy place. I really thought not only do we shoot there, but we set it there.
Take a look at that. That's the Metropolitan Cathedral. That's to the Revolutionary Memorial. That's the Angel of Independence.
Mexico is replete with spirituality and imagery, and you go back to the life of the Aztecs.
That's where the priests chop the hearts out of their subjects and roll them down the stairs.
There's no shortage of strong imagery in Mexico, and we have the right crew to create this film.
I think the main focus for all of us was to be genuine, and to be realistic. And I think that's what we wanted to do. So when you go and shoot in Mexico City, you want to take everything that's in Mexico City and use it for yourself, because it's like an ingredient, right? You're trying to make this best film with all of these, these warm colors and this culture. And we integrated that not only in the movie, but also, in the traps as well.
Cecilia's house was a really exciting and interesting location to shoot. It was one of the first locations I got to scout and see, and I got to see it at all times of day, because I was like, hey, we're shooting this at night. Really, please don't take me here during the day. I want to see what we're dealing with.
We love the idea that she clicks one light, clicks the other light, and where are they? And I think for the audiences, this is great in horror, right? The aspect of, I can see what's going on, but the character doesn't know what's going on.
We looked at the house and sort of what the architecture gave us, and then in the process of taking all these photos, you start to say, well, this angle looks great for this angle looks great for this angle looks great for this.
And this house was glass, and you can see her in it, but you also see Pighead up in the roof.
And then when that moment happens, you're sort of at that moment where you're like leaning in on the edge of your seat, because you're like, am I seeing what I think I'm seeing? A person on the top of the roof? Like, what? And you see that, and then boom, crash, and then things, change.
Saw 6, the first one that I directed, was the last one to be shot on 35mm film, and I'm really glad that it was, even though it's hard to shoot on film. It's a lot more stressful than digital, but there is great value in the texture that you get from film. And once we did Saw 3D, which was shot at 2K res on a digital camera, we started to lose something.
There is a theatricality to Saw. There is a theatricality to John Kramer as a character. He's somebody who's orchestrating these massive stages on which he, creates these moral questions and quandaries for these characters. We wanted to play with those sort of ideas. We wanted to bring this pervasive darkness. We wanted to bring this theatricality and this sort of giallo kind of inspired photography to the film. We wanted to take the movie back to what some of the earlier films felt and looked like.
But we didn't have a choice. We had to, because it was shot. It needed to look like the early Saw movies.
You know, they were shot on 35. They were scuzzy and gritty. There's arsenical greens and ochre yellows and crimson reds and this sort of like fluorescent blues. You know, we wanted to lean into those palettes, and I think it started from a conversation about what we loved about that, and then also, you know, what could we take from that, and then how do we sort of bend that to our own uses.
Even though we shot on digital, we lit it in a way that we thought emulated the look of the earlier films, and also we dirtied it up a bit in post-production.
And then as we started talking, we start to settle on what those things are and what those things feel like. And for us, one of those conversations was, we didn't want this film to be a cyan film. There's so many like modern movies that play with blue, and they play with blue in a really magical storybook kind of cyan color.
There's another kind of side effect of a filter that we used called pearlescent that does some kind of vintagey things with skin, but also causes light sources that are in the frame to kind of halo out. It's pervasive throughout this entire film, but I think it's pretty neat. And that is kind of a look that we saw in some of the earlier Saw films, especially ones that were very heavily into flashbacks, where we would blow out the highlights and blur them and do that sort of thing.
We know we're going to shoot the dramatic portion a certain way. We'd already said we want to go 1:8:5. You know, this is set between Saw 1 and 2. It needs to have that aspect ratio. Kevin likes the way that close-ups look in 1:8:5 better. I've shot a lot of material in 1:8:5, and I feel like there's some, you know, this is a film with a lot of there's vertical traps. The bloodboarding is, you know, blood spilling from above. Gabriella being hoisted into the air. There's a vertical aspect to, they're up in this control room and these characters are down on the floor. You're shooting monitors. Those are boxy. They're not CinemaScope. So you're asking questions about that in this, you know, the process of the aspect ratio. And so for us, you know, that was the choice. There's a flourish to the movie. You know, there is a stylistic edge to the movie. We wanted to bring back like the circular dolly track. We wanted to bring back under-cranking. We wanted to, you know, as things happen in the traps, we wanted the camera to put a stamp on that, you know, so it's like the finger break. We use a lambda head, and the camera's flipping as the finger breaks.
And he brought in a whole different sense of drama with a lot of his lighting, and that, you know, we can do such a great job with the traps, but if they're not photographed properly, like, it just goes to the wayside.
That early look of Saw was, I think, very important, and I think it was part of the mystique of the Saw movies. And Kevin understands that.
How do you keep the audience visually intrigued? How do you keep them stimulated? How do you keep them guessing?
John? It was you? Why? Why are we here?
And also do it in a way that is authentic to John Kramer and authentic to Saw. And so I love the first few films, but for me, they kind of live in one tonal palette. You know, there's a monochromaticness to those movies. They're set in one location, and a lot of the lighting lives in that kind of tonal space. I wanted each of our traps to have a unique feel, but still feel like they were a part of this world. So for me, what the intention was, how would John Kramer approach this? There's a theatricality to John, you know, that we've talked about. And I think for me, the idea that I sort of arrived at, and it's in other Saw movies as well, it's not fully original, but I wanted it to feel like as traps go on, lights change. You know, there's circuits that are connected to these traps, and when that circuit flips, when they press the button, the trap turns on, a light connected to the trap or within the trap turns on. You know, that's sort of how things twist into a new direction. In being around Kevin and just talking about what the scenes are about, what the beats of the scenes are, what the prosthetics are gonna look like, what, you know, his experience on Saw in the past has meant. It's all those like range of conversations you have with every person and department that ultimately feed into what the movie becomes.
So that, I think, is a big part of why this film, in my opinion at least, looks like the earlier Saws.
They wanted to make it look like Saw 2.
he and Anthony Stabley, our production designer, were integral to the movie. I mean, it would not look and feel like it does without both of them.